when designing for the web, we have to consider our fonts and typography a little bit differently. Namely, we have to ensure that the fonts that we choose can be used on the internet, can be rendered in a browser window. And not all font file formats can do that. So there's a couple of strategies that we can use to make sure that we can install a font on our machine so that we can use it in a layout application like Photoshop, and also it can be deployed to the web and rendered in a browser. And also it'll give us the flexibility to use that font across multiple platforms, so for our web design, but also for any kind of print outcomes that we require. We can get that consistency across multiple formats for our clients. So the two strategies that I want to talk about today are two font services, I suppose. The first one is Google Fonts, and the other one is Adobe Fonts, both of which you may already be very familiar with. Firstly, let's have a look at Google Fonts and downloading a Google font, installing it into my Mac so that I can use it in my Photoshop layout. But by using a Google font, I'll ensure that that font can be used on the internet as well. I tab over to my browser, and here I am at the Google font website, fonts.google.com, and it has a pretty intuitive interface to browse for different types of fonts. And there are a lot to choose from here. I'm going to look for something that's a display font for my email newsletter. For my kind of H1, my welcome message, and I'm going to choose something pretty quickly here without too much thought. How about Yellowtail? Choose Yellowtail. So I've clicked on Yellowtail, and there is a couple of mechanisms for using this font. Firstly, there's the process for selecting the font to use in your web sites and including in your code, and we'll go over that another time. But for today, we'll look at how we can download these fonts to use in our desktop mock-ups and layouts. So we simply need to download that font. And I'm speaking specifically about using a Macintosh here. I'll provide a link to installing a font for a PC if you use one of those. On a Mac though, we really just need to navigate to the file that we've downloaded, and from Google Fonts it will be a zip file. We'll open up that folder and we'll navigate to the TrueType font file, and we'll simply double click on that and install that font. So we can see now my Mac has opened up the Font Book app, and I can see that now Yellowtail is inside or is installed in the Font Book app there. And if I tab back over to Photoshop, I should be able to simply select that file and navigate to Yellowtail. It might be easier to just type it in. And there we go. And I can update that font. So I can use that font. Not that I would use that one, but I can use that font in Photoshop or another layout application. And because it's a Google font, I can ensure that I'll be able to use that when I actually deploy my website, and it will look similar. I'll be able to match my my mock-up with the actual finished website that's on the internet. Let's have a look at another service that we can use for fonts similarly, and that is the Adobe Fonts Library. And on a Mac, you can easily access the Adobe Fonts Library through your CC app, but you can also, and that's down here, manage fonts, but we can also do that through the web if we're logged in using our Adobe credentials, and that will be your RMIT username and password. And so you can see here I've got one font that's activated currently, and I'm going to choose another font to activate for this newsletter design. So a little bit of a different interface for Adobe fonts from Google, but similarly pretty easy to navigate through different types of typefaces. You can, just as you can in Google, put in some sample text. You can use the search facility up there, and I'm going to choose Milk Script. Let's have a look at Milk Script. So I'm going to view that family. And to use this font on my Mac, and I assume on your PC, you simply have to activate those fonts, and Adobe will do the syncing, the management of the syncing of that font. And you can see just up in the top corner that those fonts have been activated and synced to my library. And I'm going to navigate back over to Photoshop and see what Milk Script must be slightly bigger. Yeah. And there's Milk Script inserted into my design. Once again, I can be assured that that font will be consistent across my Photoshop mockups and my website once it's deployed and viewed in a browser. And I think the main point is that using these two services, and there are others, but these are two good options. When we use these type of services, we can make sure that our typography can be consistent across our design work that we do in Photoshop or other apps, online, and also for other applications, maybe our print work and so on.